All right, everyone, and welcome to Cyber Social Hub. And the Hubcasts are back. And if you notice a little bit, the sound is a little echoey in this room. I just literally got back into this office this week, so I don't have all my sound deadening stuff in here. I did put a cool new light up just like 30 minutes ago, and of course you can see the awesome hang on which way Christmas stuff we got going over there. So anyway, welcome back to the show. I know last week we didn't do one last week, and I can't remember the last one of these we've done. Due to the holidays, we took a little break. So welcome and thanks for hanging out. We're going to be talking to Patrick here in just a few minutes. But first, we actually have our first sponsor of the Hubcasts, which I tell you what, I am just so honored that they wanted to sponsor the Hubcasts. It is from Silo, from Authenticate. So you know how when you're researching online, for those of you that do conduct like OSINT type investigations, if you're not aware, which I'm assuming you all are, that every site you look at can look back at you, right? Yes, absolutely, of course. So for professionals, when they conduct those sensitive types of investigations, security, obviously, and anonymity, see, I was worried about that word, got it though, are paramount, right? They're pretty important. You don't want the bad guy knowing that you're looking at them. That's why literally hundreds of enterprises and government agencies rely on Silo for their research. If you hadn't had a chance to check them out, you can actually get a trial of Silo for research free for 7 full days. Free. 7 full days. All you got to do is go over there, sign up. You can do it right now. It's authenticate.com/cybersocialhub. So let me spell that out for you. That's authenticate with the number 8 at the end, right? .com/cybersocialhub, all one word, and that's it. And I'll throw it down later in the chat so you guys can have that and see it. Okay. So again, thanks guys for sponsoring the show. We've had them on a few weeks back. Awesome Hubcast. We're looking forward to some more of the stuff that they're going to be doing with us to educate you guys. So what I want to do now is we're starting a little bit of look at that. You can see my the dog bed in this shot. Didn't fully intend that to happen. Anyway, there it is. So what we're doing is I want to talk a little bit about, transitioning over to another sector, right? We know that when I was in law enforcement, you guys, most of you know that, and I did it for 15 years, and I keep my commission still up to date just in case, right? Literally, it's been 10 years now, but just in case, I still keep it. And what I want to talk about is how do you make that transition from law enforcement over to the private sector? Well, to help talk about that, why not somebody who's actually done that also? And we're going to banter back and forth. It's Patrick Siewert. And Patrick, welcome to the show. And I apologize because I got your name pronounced wrong in all of the promos I was doing. Because I think I talked to the team about it, and you got a funny story about this. I'll let you tell it. Is your name is spelled very close to Patrick Stewart, right? Literally a letter
Yep.
off from the captain from the Star Trek series. And I can't imagine being in this industry and being in law enforcement. You've never caught any razzing over that, right?
Oh, absolutely, all the time. I mean, shoot, my actual last name has always been fodder since I was a kid for all sorts of razzing, and then of course there's no shortage of razzing in law enforcement. So, but yeah, so when I was at, we said before, or the mics heated up that I was at BCERT down at NCFI back in 2011, and the lead instructor dubbed me captain because of my last name. So there you go. But I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I wish my hair was as good as yours, but unfortunately, I can't say that. It's been a long, long time since I had hair like that, if ever.
It's really just held in place. I had some guys in the industry. Imagine this, probably law enforcement. No, I know who it was. It was Matt from Monolith Forensics. He was like, "You got Lego hair." It's like, yeah, that's the snap-on hair from the Lego characters.
Yep.
It
Yep.
pretty much is it. Yeah, fits it right there. So anyway, Patrick, thanks for hanging out with us today, man. I know I think I reached out to you on Monday, something like that, or was
Yeah,
it
it may have been late
Wednesday?
last week. Either way.
Yeah, and we had the opening come in, and I was like, "Oh, please, can you do this?" Yes, thank you very much. So last minute stuff coming on, and the reason why I want to tell or have you tell the story a little bit about your background and your history Um, oh, it says I'm considerably quieter than Patrick. So I got people monitoring my feed. So hopefully that I just cranked up the mic a little bit. Let me know, Megan, on that. Megan's our everyone who's watched the show knows Megan's kind of behind the scenes and watching all of our levels. So yeah, if hopefully that's a little bit better. And Patrick, I forgot to tell you before we started, we're living about 15 seconds in the future. So it takes them about 15 seconds to hear everything that we're saying
So if
out
I
there.
blurt out a litany of curse words, you can just erase all of it. And
Nope, nope, it's still live. There's not a thing I can do about it. I just have to wait 15 seconds to get the full cringe in there. No, I don't think YouTube really cares about that. Well,
no.
there's certain things you can and can't do. It's YouTube.
Mhm.
So, what I want to talk about is a little bit about your history because you started off in law enforcement, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. Where were you
Uh,
at, and how did you get your start? What made you want to be in law enforcement of all things?
It's funny. I was actually I was in high school when I decided I wanted to enter law enforcement. Although as a junior or senior in high school, I had absolutely no idea what that meant. So I went on that path. I didn't really want to go in the military, so I went to college. Ended up graduating from Virginia Commonwealth University here in Richmond. Which fast forward 20 some odd 25 years now or something like that. I'm actually now teaching at Virginia Commonwealth University. But that's for later in the discussion perhaps. But anyway. After that, as luck would have it, if I got hired eventually by the Virginia Commonwealth University Police Department. And for those that don't know, the VCU police, the VCU campus is in the middle of the city of Richmond, so it's an urban campus. And Richmond has its fair share of crime and homelessness and all those things. So it's a very active campus police department as far as regular policing, a lot more
Mm.
than a lot of other campus police departments. So I stayed there for 2 years and wasn't without its ups and downs. It was overall a positive experience. But I decided to start looking for a role in regular law enforcement and ended up at the Louisa County Sheriff's Office, which is about halfway between Richmond and Charlottesville, where UVA is in Virginia, out in the middle
Mm.
of the hinterlands. There's not much there, but it's also where I graduated high school. So it was a good opportunity to get some real patrol experience and get the boots on the ground police work. And so that was a good a good move, a good career move, and worked in patrol for about 3 years or 2.5, 3 years. As you can imagine, after a total of about 5 years, a little bit of burnout started to creep in. So,
Can imagine
so
why.
I, so I went to I petitioned to go be a school resource officer. Now, anybody who knew me back when I was in my late 20s probably would say, "Why in the world would you want to be a school resource officer?" But it was a better schedule, frankly. Number one, I had at least, at that time I had one young child. Um, and it was a different challenge. It was something that was definitely a sort of a left turn as far as law enforcement goes. It's not dealing with your calls for service, your 911 emergency calls, those types of things, your mundane calls. It's more of a presence thing. It's more of a you know officer friendly type thing, a community involvement type thing. So it was a different, but it was a great experience because it
Mhm.
taught me a little bit more about uh, different different aspects of public service, number one, and how to deal with different types of people. Uh, School administration, for those that may be familiar with it, can be challenging to deal with from a law enforcement perspective. So you have to kind of nuance and massage that a little bit. So did that for several years as well, and it was a good experience there.
So what you're saying is you didn't have to deal with, I'd get calls on a shared driveway where two neighbors are arguing about where their cars should park, right? You didn't have to do that nonsense anymore.
No,
Go ahead.
I did have to do other nonsense, but it's funny because amongst the nonsense that you sometimes have to deal with as a resource officer, there's also the knowledge in the back of your head that the main reason why you're there ultimately is if some evil person should come into the school and start shooting up the school. That is why you're there, and you're essentially target numero uno, right? Um, and so when I came to that realization, I had very little training with regard to that, and I went to my administration. I said, "Hey." I wasn't a big fan of our SWAT team at the time. I said, "Hey, I want to go through SWAT school, but I don't want to be on our SWAT team." And they looked at me and they said, "Are you an idiot? Why would you want to do that? And we're not going to pay for you to do that." Around that time, it was about 2007. An outfit out of San Marcos, Texas, was reaching out around the country, and they're called the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Division out of San Marcos, Texas.
Hmm.
And essentially, what they do is train law enforcement all over the country to respond to active shooter events,
Oh,
active attack
nice.
events, as we now call
Hmm.
them. So I actually was in their first train the trainer outside of the state of Texas. They brought it up to Virginia, and it was right after the Virginia Tech shooting. The Virginia Tech
Oh,
shooting was
right.
in April, and this train the trainer was in August. So we had a debrief from the Blacksburg police chief and all this stuff, and it really drove home, the ultimate reason for being in the schools. Uh, and so I was then charged by the sheriff at the time to roll that training out inside the department, and eventually it went outside the department. Um, in the meantime, I got on the ICAC task force, which is how I got into this digital forensics business. Um,
Yeah, that was my next question: is how you got how'd you get roped into the the thing we call digital forensics, and so now it's becoming a
yeah,
little bit more clear.
well, so Louisa County Sheriff's Office at the time was maybe 50 people from the sheriff on down, not including civilians.
Hmm.
And that's in rural Virginia. That's everything from court security to civil process to patrol to investigations and all of that administration. Um, so we signed on as an affiliate member of the Southern Virginia Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and I was tapped to be the go-to person for working those cases. Now, I did it part-time, kind of after school hours, because I had a primary job in the schools. But I started getting online, and I'm going to date myself here too. I was on Yahoo Messenger most of the time.
Yes,
Uh,
that's right.
Yahoo Messenger doesn't exist anymore.
No, it doesn't. That's where I started as well. Was Yahoo
Yep.
Messenger roping people in. You know,
Yep.
we did this investigation once. Real quick story is that, and we had a meet at McDonald's. We took down the bad guy in McDonald's. McDonald's
Hmm.
wasn't real happy about that, but so
No.
my advice to you: don't do it in McDonald's if you guys do those kind of operations.
Yeah. Well, so that was also an eye-opening experience, right? Because you're getting online and you're acting like a 13-year-old girl. I look nothing like a 13-year-old girl, but you're learning how they talk and trying to see who might contact you. Obviously, there's standards set in place about how you can conduct those investigations. I made one case that wasn't that big of a deal.
Hmm.
And then my second case ever was a very big deal. I arrested the head soccer coach of Howard University. Um, and
Oh,
he drove down all the way from Arlington, Virginia to Louisa. The case began and ended in one night, and he was arrested, and it was a big media circus. So because of that, they actually pulled me from the schools and put me working in our special operations full time, which was ICAC, narcotics, and high profile cases, things like that. So I did that for essentially 5 years.
hmm.
And made a lot of cases. We did a lot of good work. I had the most user friendly, from a police perspective. I had the most user friendly prosecutor's office ever. One of my prosecutors had actually gone to classes at NW3C. That's
Oh,
how.
nice. Really,
Yeah, you don't really find
that's
that very
unheard
often,
of. No,
at least
no.
not back then.
Yeah, exactly.
So they were very spun up on the technology and the value of those cases, and so made a lot of good case law. It seemed like everybody I arrested, no matter how good the case was, wanted to take it to trial. So I got a lot of experience testifying and doing a lot of hours upon hours of testimony with that. And we put a lot of bad people away for a very long time, and it was a good run doing that. And that run came to an end in 2013, when I left and went to another department for about a year in an administrative role.
Hmm.
But when I was working on the ICAC task force, of course, you get when you make those cases, you make the arrest, you get the evidence, and you have to have that evidence analyzed somehow. And we would farm it out to other agencies, the state police, things like that. But of course, anybody who's done that knows that when you farm it out to someone else, it becomes low on their priority list, and it's always higher on your priority list. So we got tired of waiting, essentially, and I started going to computer forensic training. I went down to FLETC and did
Oh, nice.
the SCURS program. I went to NCFI and did the
Hmm.
BCERT program, did the NCASE program. So I did a bunch of forensics training while in law enforcement, and essentially I was a one man shop. I would do the investigations. I'd write up the search warrants. I'd uh, go to the search warrants,
Right.
seize the evidence, do the triage and all that stuff, and then do the analysis myself. So it was a kind of big fish in a small pond type deal, and so that's where I got into this digital forensics business, as I like to call it.
Yeah, it's funny. Our stories are real similar with that. Is we were I was a one man shop for the longest time, and just looking for resources. It's like, all right, where do I find help? Right? It's like I can't find help anywhere, and that's kind of really part of how Cyber Social Hub got started, is to help pull people in. It's like, hey, if you're looking for something, somebody's here bound to know something. You can come in and just ask a question. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's a pretty amazing story. So, but then you went obviously off to the private sector. How did that whole transition happen?
Well, so I was the last department I worked for. I was working about 80 miles away from my house, which is a pretty sizable commute. And it wasn't really a job that I was all that interested in. It was I worked with very good people, but they had no use for any investigative skills, really. Certainly no use for any digital forensic skills. So that skill set that was very valuable was sitting on a shelf collecting dust for about a year. And so when I left the task force role, I did actually register my business or start a business called Professional Digital Forensic Consulting, or Pro Digital for short. But I didn't do anything with it for that year. I was still in law enforcement, and so I went to my wife at the time after about a year at that role, and I said, "Hey, I think I want to try my hand at this business thing. Trying to spin up a business, doing digital forensic consulting, analysis, expert witness, all that stuff." And she was very supportive at the time, and so that's what I did. I left the job with very little lifeline in place other than me. I
Heck
was the
yeah.
lifeline.
Now, I'm going to tell you right now, because when I chose to do this, right, I went to corporate right away. I didn't go off on my own right away. I went to work for, and almost everyone knows, Access Data at the time. Um, so, and that was pretty nerve wracking, right? Because, I mean, you think in government, right, the government role, that things are nice and secure, right, which could be furthest from the truth. It's an illusion. Um,
Hmm.
and is corporate a little bit more risky, or going, especially off on your own right away? Yeah, absolutely. What kind of, how did you feel about that? I mean, and it's great that your wife was supportive. Holy cow, my wife was nervous as all get out.
Well, of course, she's not my wife anymore, but that's a totally different story. um, but it was scary. It was honestly scary. And I will tell you that leaving law enforcement, turning over a badge and a gun, sort of for once and for all, at least that's the way it felt at the time, was like a divorce.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because I had been married to the job for 15 years, even more so if you go back to when I first wanted to get into it. And now it's sort of like Superman. If you've seen the Superman movie where he disavows his powers and then he walks out of the North Pole, that's kind of what you feel like. Um,
Right.
and it was an odd feeling. I had to get a concealed weapons permit if I wanted to carry a gun. What the hell does somebody need that for? And it wasn't even valid everywhere. That's the other part. And of course, I'm a big personal safety advocate, and I locked up a lot of people, and some of them were starting to get out of prison, and so I carry a gun for personal protection.
Oh boy.
Um, those types of things, that mindset really had to change, about the very firm kind of quasi-militaristic mindset that you're in law enforcement, versus a corporate mindset. The best asset that I had at the time were the people around me that were very supportive. My brother is a serial entrepreneur. He's run very successful businesses throughout his entire life, so he was a great asset for information about how to do this. I Going from the government world to being an entrepreneur, essentially, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Um,
Yeah,
and then you
it's
get and then you
it's
got to drum
funny
up cases. That's a whole other issue.
because you have to put
um,
one day your sales hat on, and another day your finance hat on, and another day your legal hat on, and oh my gosh, it's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Insurance and administrative stuff and invoices and all those things, that I had no idea about really. Um, but I had very supportive people around me, which was a great help. Um, but I still at the time I still really was close to my law enforcement roots, so I wanted to keep doing something. So I became affiliated with one of our regional police academies here in Virginia, and I still have my active instructorship through Virginia, because you don't have to be a sworn police officer in Virginia to be a law enforcement instructor. So I got hooked up with one of the police academies here in Virginia to roll out the active shooter training, which I still absolutely love. Um, and I also became a firearms instructor for them as well. So I help out and I teach some digital forensics for them as well. So I'm an adjunct instructor there still to this day. In fact, that's where I was half of this week. Um, Rolling out different curriculums. But so I keep my toes kind of wet in the law enforcement world, and I like that because it's, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's more on my terms than it is on someone else's terms.
Right, right.
And so I like that control, I guess, that I have over what I want to do versus what I don't want to do.
Nope, I understand exactly what you're saying. I just had to, every year here, at least in Ohio, we had a ton of training that we had to do this year. It was like 24 hours of it. And, I'm just auxiliary now. And gosh, I'm learning about stuff that I'm like, I don't care about this anymore, but I had to still take it and take this test and everything else. And yeah, I still keep my commission up. And I'm like you, just in case I like to keep my one foot in the doorway. I have no idea why. I really don't, but I still do it.
Well, I looked for that opportunity to kind of keep a badge and keep a commission. It just didn't come my way. So, eventually, when the expiration date goes away, you're like, okay, well, at least I have a full time gig that I can fall back on.
That's right. So tell me a little bit about, because some of this, the title of the hubcast was moving into from the public sector to the private sector, and we talked a little bit about some of the it makes you feel uneasy, because I was talking to my friends on the force at the time, and they're like, "What are you doing? Are you stupid? What are you leaving law enforcement for? You got you can retire in X amount of years and you're guaranteed a pension." It's like, I ran the numbers though, right? I came from a fairly small department as well. And once you run the numbers, and it's like, wait a minute, I can make this in the corporate world or off on my own versus what I'll make here for no respect. And it's even worse now, right? I mean, you see it all the time in the news. Uh, the attitudes towards law enforcement, which is rough some days.
Oh yes.
So I'm glad I'm not out there doing it, and I feel really bad for a lot of the guys that are out there, still doing it every day. But you know that transition, that first step, is really probably the hardest. And I've seen people do it different ways. Man, you just went cold turkey though. You just jumped off the side of the freaking cliff, right? Some guys will actually start building a business a little bit on the side, up ahead. So I've seen it done a bunch of different ways. But so, man, how does that make you feel, like just jumping off that cliff and just saying, all right, it's either sink or swim at this point?
It is. It's trial by fire. I've told this. I didn't come up with this phrase, but I've repeated it to other people who've come to me over the years about launching out of their own, whether it be in from law enforcement to the private sector or in any other realm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I actually got it from one of my favorite entrepreneur podcasters, Adam Carolla. He says, always bet on yourself, right? You can always bet on yourself, and if you bet on yourself, now you're not necessarily making that much of a gamble, right? Because it's all on you to make it work. And so there's a lot of grind to it. There's no doubt about it. Um, at least for the way I did it. Now jumping off into the corporate world, I actually have recently done that, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But
Yeah.
um, the being getting into the entrepreneurial world was definitely an educational experience. There are a lot of things that I did not know, and I've had multiple people come to me since I've done it and ask me, "Hey, what's your advice? What could we do?" Particularly with regard to going from law enforcement to running their own digital forensic shop. And so I try to give some sage advice. I also try to be realistic about it. I probably get that from my father. He's a pragmatist at heart, and so am I. So anymore, I kind of don't mince words. I actually wrote an article on my blog about it several years ago, and it was called "So You Want to Start a Digital Forensic Business?" And so I
Yeah.
listed out some tips on that. Now I would adjust it greatly these days because of a number of different factors. And say, if you're a one person and you want to start your own digital forensic business, I think long and hard about it because it's getting more and more difficult to make money.
It's a crowded world out there for sure. I've
Yep.
noticed.
Yes. So to back to your original question, it's one of those things where it's you have to change your mindset. Uh, I I think most people in law enforcement share the same mindset of the money will come. I don't necessarily, my bona fides will speak for me. And, if it's sort of the field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. I can tell you this much: if you build it, they will not come. You have to go
No,
get them. You have to go get them.
that's
Uh,
exactly right. Because
and you
same.
repeatedly have to go get them.
It's like our stories are a little flipped. You went straight into on your own entrepreneur, and from corporate, then I left and just decided, okay, what am I going to do today? And that's when I started my own company. And you think you know a lot about it when you work in corporate, but really what it came down to is I would pass off a lot of stuff to other divisions in this big company. It's like, hey, this
Yep.
goes to HR. Hey, this goes to finance. This goes, and now you don't have those resources anymore. And you're like, oh, I got to figure this stuff out. I have no idea how to do any of this stuff. It's
Right.
like an LLC. A what? I got to do what? And how
Hmm.
much money is the government going to take from me every month?
A lot.
That's the biggest thing. If any of you, by the way, real quick, are considering starting your own, make sure you pay your taxes constantly. We do it monthly,
Yep.
just so we don't get behind on it, because you'll get behind real quick. And I'll tell you,
Yeah, and
Uncle
it
Sam
hurts.
has no pity on you. They
Nope.
will come after you.
Nope, nope. And on the tax tip, I would say, when you're working for someone else, you get your paycheck and
Mm,
it's automatically sucked out of your paycheck, right? As an entrepreneur, it doesn't happen anymore. Like you
right?
said, you sit down and write that check every quarter or every month, and it's a lot of money. And so when you're starting to wonder how that where all that money's going and what you're getting for it and all that stuff, of course that's a different topic. But it is definitely something for consideration. I mean, I was a
Yeah.
1099 essentially for eight plus years,
Yeah.
in a number of different roles. So, um, you know, having the wherewithal to set aside that 30 or 40% definitely saves you a lot of heartache when April comes around.
Yeah. And just in case you guys listening didn't hear him, he did indeed say 30 to 40%, and it's not a lie.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not a lie. And come the end of
And
the
the
year, when you see how much you owe, especially being 1099, you can't pay throughout the year, can you? Did you pay throughout
well,
the year?
eventually I became an S corp, and so
There you
I was
go.
paying I was paying myself, and then the taxes were coming out of it.
There you go. There you go. That's the
Yeah.
way we do it here. Is yeah,
Yep.
because
Yeah.
that's scary. And real quick, I want to make sure everyone in the audience knows. I see there's about 20 some people here right now. If you guys have any questions right off, feel free to ask them in chat. Now we're only broadcasting out to YouTube today. Um, no other reason except I forgot to put the other ones out there, and I'm in a new office, and I wasn't real sure about the network here yet. I want to make sure we're good with at least one stream, and then I can go out to 4 streams simultaneous from there. But if you guys do have a question, just throw it into the YouTube chat by all means, and we'll definitely get to it. You guys are being really quiet. Either we're really engaging, or everyone has fallen asleep, and they're doing work somewhere, and they've lost us under a million windows. So that's really the two things that
No,
could be happening here.
what's going to happen is some of my friends that I teach with that are I'm connected with on either Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, they're going to start typing questions like, "Why is Patrick so ugly?" Or
I saw one come by about the hair. Your hair was like Patrick Stewart. Oh yeah, it was Melvin.
it's true.
So yeah, there it is, right there.
There you go.
So yeah, there we go. All right. So anyway, I want to make sure I get that in there. Also, real quick, I want to do a shameless plug in here, because I forgot to do at the beginning of the show. We have an online conference every year that we started. We actually started it at COVID, and it's absolutely free, 100% free. We don't charge you guys at all to attend, which I think is awesome, right? Because I came from a small department, budgets were tight. So we give it for free. What's going to happen here? Everyone is going to go, I see all the cops already raising an eyebrow. What's the catch? It's like, we're going to send you some emails, right? We're going to send you emails. All you have to do is unsubscribe if you don't want those emails. It's really that simple. That's how we try to bring you in. And it's Cyber Social Con. If you go to cybersocialhub.com, It's free to sign up. You can sign up and talk to all sorts of people. If you're into drone forensics, computer forensics, we're getting more and more OSINT folks in there. That if you have some questions, hopefully someone can answer one of your questions. And there's a lot of great free resources in there too. But that's coming up December 14th and 15th. And Megan, can you, because I don't have the link real quick, can you Slack me that link and I'll post it into the main chat here, and that way people can go and sign up. Again, it's free. It's 2 days, December 14th and 15th. There's a lot of great sponsors out there, and you don't have to be like present during it. We obviously record all of them, and you can come back later on and watch. Okay, there's my shameless plug out of the way, Patrick. Thanks for dealing with that. I
No
appreciate it.
worries.
I'm going to put this link in here that Megan just was kind enough to throw out there. All right, there we go. Okay, so now if everyone has probably noticed, right, Patrick has nothing called law enforcement under his name there, right? There's a little thing called Archer Hall under there. Tell us what happened. Tell us about that.
Well, it's funny when 2022 started, I had no ideations at all that I'd be doing any change in my business. So I'd run Pro Digital for about 8.5 years, and with every year with increasing levels of success. And to the point where it was honest, I brought on a couple of contractors that were helping me out. A couple guys, mostly law enforcement guys that I knew from going to trainings, and I'm a Celebrate contract instructor. One of them is a good friend of mine that does that as well. So the workload was getting pretty good, and so also all the administrative things. So when 2022 started, I just figured, okay, what's the I've established this thing, Pro Digital, right? What's the next move? And the next move is either going to be expansion,
Mm-hmm.
meaning hiring people, and I already have an office, but hiring people and going through that whole route and getting more equipment and more licenses, and expanding all of those things, or potentially being acquired. And it really just came to me, the acquisition route. I was looking at the possibility of expansion, and I was not liking the numbers. I'm 45 years old. I'll be 46 a week from today, and I don't like the thought of going into mountains and mountains of debt at my age.
Right.
I just don't like it.
Well, first, happy
um,
birthday, early birthday, by the
oh,
way.
thanks.
Congrats.
I don't look a day over 47. So yeah, when it came to me, it actually came to me through another forensic company in Denver that had just been acquired by Archer Hall, and I had done some sub out work for them throughout the years, and they called me for another sub out job, and they're like, and I know that they had been acquired earlier in the year, and they're like, hey, why don't we just put you in touch with the CEO and you just have a conversation? I'm always open to the conversation, wherever, it either leads somewhere, or it's a win or learn, right? It's not win or lose. Um, so I had a conversation with the CEO. It was funny. I was actually teaching an active shooter class in Billings, Montana, dressed very much like I am now, not like you would go to a business meeting. And and we had a Zoom meeting, and it was just a conversation about Pro Digital, and what it's doing, and what works and what doesn't work, and how they do things. Archer Hall is a nationwide provider of digital forensic services,
Right.
litigation support, digital forensic, and e-discovery services. So that conversation filtered into another conversation, which filtered into another conversation with more people, and eventually they came to me and said, here's what we want to offer you. We want to offer you a cash buyout for your business. By the way, probably not as much as everybody thinks. Everybody thinks that I can just, sail off and not have to work anymore, but unfortunately not true. But it was good. It was good enough to get my attention, and we want to make you a director of digital forensics and e-discovery at our nationwide company. And here's the deal: you don't have to leave where you are. You can, we're essentially all work remote, and my role is a little bit different. I still do hands-on digital forensic analysis, testimony, things like that, but as a director, of course, there's examiners that are working mostly the boots on the ground work. So um, we went back and forth on some specifics, and lo and behold, we came to an agreement. And September 1st, Pro Digital was acquired by Archer Hall. So I've been at it for close to 3 months now, and it's going along pretty good. I really have no complaints.
That's awesome. I know that's every entrepreneur's dream is acquisition at some point. Is like, do I want to sell it, or you got to make those decisions of what you want to do with it. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I was
that's
talking to somebody else at the time too. I was talking, and two companies actually came to me about acquisition.
really.
I was talking to somebody else, and their deal wasn't quite as attractive. And so I don't know how many conversations I had with my now fiance about it, and my kids, and about the change it's going to mean, because I hadn't worked for anyone else essentially for over 8 years, and now I'm going to have a boss, and now my time is going to be tracked more, and I'm going to be a little bit more accountable to the clock and things like that.
Well,
But really,
you're
there.
engaged, right? You're going to have a boss again here shortly, anyway. So I mean, it's not much different, right?
I suppose that's one way to put it.
Yeah.
But I picked that boss,
Right.
and thankfully she picked me too. Um, so yeah, I mean, it is another adjustment, right? Just like going from law enforcement to being an entrepreneur to going to the private sector, it's another adjustment going from working for yourself and being the boss. Look, hey, it's a nice day. I own a couple few motorcycles, and I'm a big motorcycle rider. It's a nice day. I don't have a lot that's pressing. I don't have any court imposed deadlines over the next week or whatever. I'm just gonna hop on two wheels and go enjoy this nice day, right? I can't necessarily do that anymore. Yes, I can to a degree, but the work's got to get done. So,
Hmm.
and the work doesn't really stop, thankfully. And so, there's a little bit of an adjustment there as well, but it's not a bad one. It's something that I've embraced. I'll tell you what else has happened is I've gotten my life back a little bit. Um, with as busy as Pro Digital was getting, my weekends were not really mine anymore.
I know
Taking
the
time
feeling.
off.
I
Yeah,
know the feeling all too well right now. Oh man.
take taking time off was always a challenge, because you're never really off,
Mm-mm.
because there's phone calls coming in, and you've got to, if you don't, the way I always looked at it is, if I don't answer that phone call or that email or that inquiry when it comes in, they're just going to go to somebody else.
Nope.
And
Exactly.
so you gotta stay on top of it. And there's still some of that where I am now, but it's not quite as all encompassing. All in, it doesn't permeate every bit of my life as much as it used to.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about some advice now, right? If you had to give, and we're going to go just as many key pieces of advice that we can give, right? We'll collaborate on this here. As it comes to you, what do you think is some big pieces of advice that you could give law enforcement who's thinking of transitioning over, and some of the challenges they may face? I know that's a really lengthy condition I just gave there, but it will help them with that follow through as well.
Yeah, there's the one of the most notable things that I noticed when and I think it was partially because I was going to be an entrepreneur, but uh, also I've noticed this in the corporate world. Unfortunately, for all the good that law enforcement does, they can be quite cannibalistic. It can be a very toxic and negative environment. I don't care where you work. I don't care how good your bosses may be or you think they are. It can still be a very uh, uh, negative environment. I mean, it can, and that's not just the people you're dealing with out on the street. It can be internally, which can wear on you as well. The thing that I noticed transitioning was that isn't really, it's certainly not that pervasive in the private sector. I had many people wanting to help me in whatever way they could. People I'd never met before. People, acquaintances of acquaintances, networking, wanting to, hey, is there anything I can do to help drive business your way? Now, I made the mistake of saying, yes, lawyers are my clients. And so they would send me real estate lawyers. And I'm like, no, those are not most by and large, those are not the lawyers I'm talking about. Um, but so, the fact that people actually wanted to help me succeed was something that I honestly was not used to. And so I really appreciated it, number one, and it was kind of eye opening. And one of the pieces of advice I've given to people that have posted or asked me is, the whole world is not full of dirtbags.
Mm.
It is actually a decent place filled with decent people who actually want to help you. So let them help you, and take that assistance in the manner in which it's intended. As cops, we always think that the next person around the corner wants to slice our throat. Uh,
Right.
Now, it can sort of be that in the corporate world too, but
Oh boy.
um, it's not necessarily like that all the time. So, and it's particularly in small business or entrepreneurial type things, it's not like that. People actually want to help, so accept the help, go with the help, and welcome it, because it's nothing but good.
Yeah, and I can't remember the stats, and that's a good point that you bring up. Is that I can't remember what percentage of the population that law enforcement actually deals with. It's really low, like
Hmm.
3 to 5%, something like that.
Hmm.
And of course, they're all shitbags, right? I mean, for the most part, it's occasionally that you get some good people, but those stories aren't very often. You're dealing with the turds day to day,
Yep.
and you're getting called, and that's you get that mindset. I did it for 15 years. You get that mindset of everybody's a turd because that's all I deal with day to day out here. The world is just a horrible place, and it literally took me years to start thinking differently because of that. And yeah, and like you said, not everybody's a bad person out there. And again, I'll reinforce what you said too. There are some bad people out there in the regular world. People are
Hmm.
people, no matter where you're at. But for the most part, it's been a lot of support too. So yeah, don't be afraid to take that. And I think that that law enforcement has that issue of trust, right? Of like, hey, what does this guy really want? Right?
Right.
What's the motive behind this? Why are you helping me out? What do you want? Are you gonna come get me later or what? Do I owe you a favor? How's this work?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and along those lines, you're going to have to do work for free.
Oh
if
boy.
you want to if you want to get business, particularly as an entrepreneur, but even in the corporate world, you're starting over from, generally speaking, at a different position, a different entity, right? So you're going to have to put in that additional effort, just like you did when you were a rookie cop, and you would go down to the police store and spend half your paycheck on flashlights and things that say Black Hawk on them. So you're going to have to put in that effort. Just because you've already done one career doesn't mean the people in your next career know all about that. So you're going to have to put in the effort to make yourself stand out, if that's what you want. If you just want a job and a paycheck, that's cool too. But I've always been kind of a pusher, a driver, a doer, and
Yep.
that's never really sat well with me.
Yeah, no, good points. And really it's depending on the road that you want to go because I've done both. I went to corporate right after law enforcement. And a lot of times it was 9 to 5 when I'd watch people and they'd be in at 9, out at 5, and they were done. That was it. And that's not my mindset. It never has been my mindset of the 9 to 5. But that does exist, as you said. But if you're looking to start your own gig, there is no such thing. All days end in Y, right?
Yep.
It doesn't matter. Weekends don't exist any longer, as you said earlier in the show. It's hard if you're coming from a standard, and I hate to say government mindset. I had it for a long time, right? It's like, hey, I'm just working this through as I go, and you're going to have to really prove yourself and put that extra effort in, especially if you're off on your own. That's the
Yep.
big thing. In corporate, you can probably get away with that initially, but man, you got to. It's the work I think is more demanding in the private sector. What are your thoughts
It
on
can
that?
be. Yes, it definitely can be. I mean, there are days. I mean, as a cop, shoot, when I was a detective, I can say this now. You go out to your hour and a half lunches. You got Burger Fridays at the restaurant halfway across the county. Nobody really cares. Everybody's going and taking
Mm-mm.
their hour and a half lunch as a detective, right? Or 2 hour lunch or whatever. So that isn't really something that you can do most of the time in the private sector. Maybe here or there once in a while, but that's not something that you can do. I would also say that, as with every case, almost every case that I made in law enforcement, because big fish, small pond, and because of the public interest in the thing, the to catch a predator interest. Almost every case they would shove me in front of the cameras and make me make a statement and press release and all that stuff. Uh, so I was essentially my own cheerleader in law enforcement, but also quiet professional, right? Most of the people that I am drawn towards in the law enforcement realm still are the quiet professional types. In when you're out on your own and or in the corporate world, there's no such thing as a quiet professional. I mean, yes, you can be modest and drop the ego a little bit, but nobody's going to be your cheerleader except for you.
Right.
Uh, so particularly as an entrepreneur, again, like I said before, if you build it, they will not come. So you've got to go out and get it. You've got to take what you can take and take what you need, and even what you can get beyond that, and make the best of it. Uh, I've been very fortunate that with every new client, every new phone call that I get, with every new case, is someone else that's trusting me to take my experience and credentials and training and all of that stuff, and put my best foot forward as far as that case goes. And I try not to wave the banner too much, but sometimes you just have to be your own marketing person, right? Um,
Oh
and
boy.
and so you got to learn how to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And you alluded to this a little bit earlier. Is a lot of the guys are looking to start their own shop. Maybe this is what they know, and they're really good at these forensic cases, or just any type of digital investigation case, and they want to start their own business similar to what you did. Um, where can you go to get clients? Where do you go? Because obviously, if you're in law enforcement, you just sit and wait. You have your own marketing department. It's called patrol and
Right.
detective division, right?
Right.
They go out and get your business for you. That's their sales
Yep.
team. So they're bringing stuff back. But when you're off on your own, how do you go and do that? Where do you start? What rocks to overturn and stuff?
Oh, geez. I mean, if I tell you that, I'd have to. No, I'm kidding. Um, no. There's first of all, there's plenty of work to go around, right?
Mm.
There's another company here in Richmond that's run by a former law enforcement guy who's also named Patrick and bald with a beard, and so that became a marketing nightmare after a while. But how do you go out and get the clients? You have to, number one, figure out who they are, right? Uh, as I said before, the people that were sending me will and testate attorneys. Those aren't the attorneys that I generally want most of the time. But we need trial attorneys, right? Because the evidence that we're dealing with is involved in litigation, so we need attorneys that are involved in that. And where do they go? Well, any given state or even locality is going to have a trial lawyers association associated with it, right? And sometimes they're geared more towards personal injury, sometimes they're geared more towards criminal defense. But finding those entities, and you're going to have to spend the money to make the money in order to sponsor those entities, get your face in front of them, shake the hands, have the conversations. It took me literally years to get to the point with a particular organization here in Virginia, to where now people come up to me at the conferences, hey Patrick, hey, you know what, I got a case for you, and I need to talk to you about this or that, and they know me by name and they know my face, and I get CLE opportunities with them. None of that stuff is going to come from day one. You've got to build those relationships. Business is relationships, period, end of story.
Yep,
And if you're
absolutely.
if you're squandering those relationships or taking them for granted, they will go away, they will die on the vine. So cultivating, knowing how to cultivate relationships, how to continue them. And through COVID, it wasn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world either. um, but how to create them, cultivate them, and carry them through your tenure in whatever role you're working is super important. I can't stress it enough. And I'm not even really a people person, but I've had to become one.
Yeah, you learn that real quick
Yep.
to do that. And I couldn't have said it any better. It's all about relationships and just building those with people. We're not talking go out every Friday night with somebody to have a beer or something like that, but it's more of a casual. Hey, get to know you, build that trust all up, and yeah, it does take time. Boy, does it ever
Yep.
take time. So
Yep.
we've been now. This is our sixth year, end of our sixth year. We're going into year 7 now. So we're really blessed to still be rocking and rolling. And a lot of it is, hey, it's all relationships. And like you said, trade shows, getting to know people, see them face to face, get out there and get to know them. Because just, granted, there was a few years of COVID where we had no choice, where we had to do a lot of Zoom calls, things like that. But um, get out there and meet them face to face, not just a Zoom call. Make a special trip. It may cost you a little bit of money, but get out there and do it.
Yeah, for at least before COVID, for a while, every Christmas I would go to the attorneys that were particularly good to me, either for that year or years leading up to that, for a period of time. And I bring them a bottle of scotch. Even if I got to drive 2 hours to go do that and make several visits, shake a hand. Hey, just wanted to say happy holidays. Here's that. All those things matter and they make you stand out. Um, I can't. I just can't stress enough that sitting there and waiting for the phone to ring isn't going to work.
Right.
It's just not.
No, no, absolutely not. There's a book, and if Megan's still here, which she probably is, that I absolutely love. It's written by M.J. DeMarco. I don't know if you've ever listened to M.J. DeMarco before. He's got some great books, and he was an entrepreneur. He used to drive limo in Chicago. Right now, he's multimillionaire guy. Just a normal everyday guy. Most importantly, he is a Star Wars nerd, a Matrix nerd. So he is our generation type guy. And there's this book, and it's called Unscripted. Now he's got a couple other ones out too, but Unscripted. I listen to audiobooks, especially when I mow,
Yep.
right? Just because it helps pass time. It's 17 hours, but it is the best entrepreneur book that I've ever listened to by far. Because he's just, if you're offended by the F word, don't get this book because literally you can't go, I don't think, a paragraph without saying it. But my background, I don't care. Military and law enforcement, it's just like, yeah, whatever.
Offended by it. This is the longest I've ever gone without saying it.
Oh, that's so great. Hey, real quick
But
too, I wanted to mention, and I'll let you finish your thought here. Is if you guys have any questions for Patrick, I just looked up at the clock, and it's literally we got 8 minutes left. I was like, holy crap, that went by fast. So if you got any questions about anything, feel free to reach out. You can also he's on Twitter. That's where we usually have our conversations.
yep,
Is Twitter, and it's not like crazy. No matter what anyone says, Elon Musk is doing an okay job with it. But
I'm leaving Twitter.
it's like, whatever. I'm not leaving. I've been there. I had my 14th year birthday on Twitter. I've been on Twitter 14 freaking years. That's way too long. But anyway, you're there. What's your name on Twitter? It's not. It's
It's
not.
it's RVA Robert Victor Adam 4 N Nancy 6. So RVA Forensics. RVA is in reference to Richmond, Virginia, which is where I live and where my office is.
There you go.
So
That way, if we need
RVA
to reach out to him,
Forensics. Yep.
um, then obviously, if you
And
want to
on
reach out to
LinkedIn and
me,
all that stuff.
oh yeah, you can find him real easy there as well. Um, I tell you what, that's one of the things I noticed, and that's where I think I first saw you was on social media, was in that area. Yeah, I think so. Um, was it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And you did a great job with that, and a lot of it is like getting information out there. You wrote some phenomenal blogs and passing on free information to the community, and that got you noticed. I think that really helps. And I would throw that in as another tip, right? Is
Yes.
constantly give back because, especially on your site, because like attorneys, if they see this and it's like, oh man, this guy wrote this article, he knows his stuff. So and there it is. So he's got to be an authority in the industry, right? I mean that
Y-
helps. What's your
Yes.
experience with that, real quick, in the last 6 minutes?
And that's led to a ton of opportunities. Nothing that, as far as free work goes, nothing has cost me less, but gotten me more than writing articles and doing case studies, things like that. It's blossomed now into doing CLEs for attorneys. I wrote a chapter for a textbook that I think came out either yesterday or it's coming out in the next couple few weeks. One or two articles I've written have been picked up by NACDL and Texas criminal defense lawyers, stuff like that. So it that volume of work has led to a lot of good things. And it's original content. That's the hardest part. And I'm sure you can certainly appreciate this. Coming up with original content is the hardest part. I super appreciate um, the folks in our industry that come out with that original content, Heather and um, I could go on with a list of names, but
Oh yeah, a
uh,
bunch
they
of
come
them.
out with this great content that is awesome for the community. And to go back to what you were saying, that can oftentimes lead to referrals to you personally from other people in the industry. I mean, most of them are in law enforcement still, right? They can't work criminal defense cases, so and a lot of times they can't work civil cases, so they will refer out to people that they trust based upon what they've seen, what they read, things like that. So that also comes around full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. And that original content, it's rough. It's time consuming. It really is, to make sure you're producing something that is, number one, very accurate, right? Because you don't want to give
Mhm.
somebody bad information. So you're always checking it probably a million times over before you send it out. It's like, hey, can you peer review this for me to make sure that this is the results that we're getting here? So it's a lot of challenges, but that's what I've noticed. And if you want to get noticed in the industry, that's really a way to go. If you have some content out there, even if it's building off of something someone else has done, right? Maybe with some additional information, giving
Yep.
full credit, because that's what's important in this industry, right? Is if you're in law enforcement and you're looking to transition, never to take credit for something that's not yours.
Nope.
Give the credit first, build upon it, and then man, you can just rock that out, and you'll get noticed real quick in the industry. So, um,
So, real quick story. I was at Techno in May in Myrtle Beach, and several people came up to me who I do know, and were, hey, good to see you, this and that. And there were one or two people that were tapping me on the shoulder. Hey, Patrick, nice to see you again. I'm like, and now I'm horrible with names to begin with, but I have no idea who this person is. Hey, how are you? But that's all part of being part of the community. It's happened at IASIS too, where people go,
yep.
hey, read that article of yours. Thanks for. I always say, well, you're the one who read it.
Yeah, you're that one person.
Yeah, but and then the final point about what you said about original content and giving attribution and things like that, uh, as one that works very hard, I'm sure you can appreciate this as well. Coming up with original content, having someone swipe that content is it's a visceral reaction,
Yeah,
because we put our hearts into it, and when people steal it or appropriate it for their own, that can it's happened a few times over the years, and I've documented it and or done something about it every time, but it's not good. So if you ever get that urge to, hey, I think that's something I want to write about that Patrick or Kevin already wrote about, please don't do that.
yeah, just build upon it. Make it
Yep,
better.
sure,
Reference
absolutely.
the original article. That's all good as long as you're doing stuff like that. So Dan here, I wanted to put this up here on the screen real quick. Dan says, "Good stuff. I recently started down that entrepreneur route and concur. Customers do not show up. No, they absolutely don't. Appreciate all the insights given the webinar. No problem, Dan. Hopefully, we gave a little bit of stuff. And if, like I said, you can reach out to Patrick on Twitter, LinkedIn, a million different places out there if you have some questions. I'm always available as well through Cyber Social Hub and to reach out. Patrick, was there anything more that you wanted to add? We covered a lot of stuff in this hour.
We did. No, I appreciate the opportunity, and to Dan, good luck to you, man. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and to anyone who wants to do it, I would say if you're up for the work and up for the challenge, it's super rewarding, and it can
Mm,
be really fun. It's also a lot of work. So, I just like to say that throughout all of this time, from day one in law enforcement to today, I wouldn't be able to do this without the support of the people around me. So. Never forget that. Your work life is your work life, but you also have to go home to people that are the ones that are really supporting you. So never forget that. When we do train the trainer classes on the active shooter side, we preach that a lot. That once you turn in the badge and the gun, what are you going to have then?
right?
Even if you're not going to transition to something else, you're just going to retire. There's always got to be something. If that's all you have, then you have kind of nothing, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because at the one day it will all be gone, and
Yep.
and so we don't want to. My father's 91 years old. He's not going to sit on his deathbed and say, Patrick, I wish I could work one more day. So know what's valuable in your life, and grasp onto that.
Yep. No, absolutely, man. That's some great advice right there, because it's not about the job; it's about the life that you're building out there for sure.
Yep.
Real quick, as we wrap up here, obviously we rely on YouTube's crazy algorithm. So if you guys could hit the like button down somewhere in this area, I think we're on YouTube alone. That would really help us out. If you even subscribe to the channel, we try to do this every week. Try to. Um, Sometimes it's a little challenging to do. And there's also a little bell, so you get notified of when we do go live. So thank you. I see some people hitting the like buttons now. I appreciate that very, very much. Again, we do these shows for you. So if there's something that you want to hear about or a topic that you want to talk about, then by all means, if you even want to come on the show, please come on the show, and we can talk about what other. And Patrick, I know there's probably a million different topics we could talk about. This is the one that kind of resonated, right? Because I've been wanting to do a series like this and just getting people's advice who've been there, done that. So I do appreciate your insight, man. It was awesome. Absolutely awesome. So I want to thank you so much for coming onto the show and taking your time out of your day, because I know you were rushing from the academy to get to this. And again, I appreciate you. Really.
I do appreciate the opportunity. I always like having these conversations with good people and putting out the word. I don't know everything, but and if I don't know, I'm going to tell you I don't know. But if I do know, I'll try to help you out as best I can.
Yep. Awesome stuff. And Derek, again, thank you. Again, we do these things for you guys. So anything you guys want to hear, by all means, let us know. Patrick, don't go anywhere. Just kind of hang out there. And
Yes,
for
sir.
everyone else, thanks so much for hanging out with us on your Friday. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving as well here in the U.S. I know Canada's was way back in wherever it was. When was theirs? Like beginning of November, or I don't know. I always lose track of when Canadian Thanksgiving is. Sorry, guys. But anyway, so thanks a lot, guys, for hanging out. Really appreciate it. There's a lot of comments coming in. I'm trying to get these things on the screen at least for a quick second before we go off there. It's mid-October. Yes, thank you, Megan. I appreciate that. I never. It's Halloween.
It's
It's
mid
not.
it's mid October, eh?
Hey. All right, Patrick, hang tight for me. Don't go anywhere. And guys,
Will
thanks so
do.
much. I really appreciate